podcast role. Welcome in.
You're listening to An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents and Leadership Podcast, a proud member of the Podcast Roll Network. Hello, Jamie.
Hello, Peter.
How's your week going?
I'm a little tired. I had an early flight this morning, so
Where do we find you now? Where are you?
I'm home. I came back from Central Oregon, but there was no flight. Usually we leave, such a short trip that we can fly out the night after we're done with our work, but there were no flights, so I had to get on the 6 a.m.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's no fun. Well, listen, I got a flight yesterday from New York back to Seattle, and I got there 2 hours early because I'm a lunatic. In fact, I usually get there even earlier. So if I'm honest with myself, I got there 2.5 hours early and through security. And then my flight was
through
6 hours.
security 2.5 hours.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Not just at the airport. I'm at the gate. And then my flight was 6 hours delayed. So I was there for 8.5 hours before even starting the 6-hour flight. So I will tell you, though, I mean, if it's a mechanical issue and there's something broken, I'm glad they're not flying until it's fixed. And this time I was flying Alaska, so I'm glad that they were abundantly cautious about taking off. And they sent us like credits today for future flights, so I appreciated that. They also sent me $12 to buy food at the airport. There's nothing that costs $12.
Where were you, at JFK or something?
JFK, yeah.
Yeah.
So I got a bean burrito.
That's good. That's amazing. I thought you were like in the Twix bar area.
Nope.
We're 12.
I will say, though, I've had interactions with that airline, and they're not a sponsor, so I can stop talking about them. But when I have contacted them, I have absolutely felt heard. And so there are times and so maybe they're sick of hearing from me, but that actually makes me think of our guest today.
I enjoyed our guest very much.
He talks about shifting from heard to held through
shared
leadership.
I wrote
right?
that same down.
So there it is.
I have some big thoughts about this.
Oh, I
do want to bring one thing up. The interview opens with you asking about a game, about a Mets game. And I'm like, we are clearly time traveling.
I know. He was so kind to tell me that the Mets won. And they did win that game. But
that game, when was this, August?
Yeah. Yeah, I got to talk with Matt a long time ago, and I'm really thrilled that we're finally airing the conversation. And I think it's coming in really at a good point in time. We're in January. Superintendents are taking stock of their budgets, taking stock of their staffing needs, having real conversations with their boards around their own evaluations, and thinking about their relationships to their staff and to their community. And so I'm super happy that we've waited. It is kind of funny he says the Mets win, and I'm like, oh, thanks, man. I really appreciate that. But in the long run, the Mets absolutely.
It turns out they did not win.
They were not winners. And then got edged out by the Cincinnati Reds. Just terrible. So you can see on today's image, I'm wearing my Seattle Mariners hat. And maybe that's intentional. They had a much better end to their season, although fell just short as well of the World Series.
What is it?
But boy, they did great.
Mid-January, January. Yeah.
Yeah, pitchers and catchers are coming back in about a month.
Pitchers and catchers, few weeks.
I love it. Can't wait.
Few weeks.
I know. So do you want to get into the conversation with Matt and then come back?
Yes, please. I think this is one, beyond maybe giving them that Matt Pitman is a school leader in Australia. And I just appreciate it when we have guests from other places, other countries, how easy it is to see how their system is similar to ours and make connections and approaches to leadership that are similar, while at the same time wanting to ask more questions about how their system works. Like, I feel both are happening at the same time for me. So I really enjoyed it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I loved it too. So before we go in, I do want to recognize our sponsor. And it made me think about how actually Dr. Matt Pitman, he says, we need to treat our students as people, not objects. And so I loved that as a phrase. And that's exactly why IXL is such a game changer for your schools. It's not just about data. It's about making sure that every student in your village feels held through personalized learning that automatically adapts to their unique levels. It's used by 96 of the top 100 school districts. It is research proven, and it will boost results while taking the load off your teachers. So learn more about them. Visit ixl.com/imperfect today. This is An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents and Leadership Podcast. I'm Peter Stiepelman.
And I'm Jamie Manson.
And we will see you on the other side. Today on An Imperfect Leader, my guest is Dr. Matt Pitman. And Matt is an experienced educational leader. He has extensive experience in the leadership of curriculum teams and programs, student well-being, student improvement, and community engagement. And he's also the author of The Connection Conundrum, Empowering Teachers to Lead a Culture of Sustainable Connection. Matt Pitman, welcome to An Imperfect Leader.
Thank you, Peter. I'm excited to talk about something that I think is essential to good leadership, is understanding that perfection's just not really within our grasp. So this is exciting.
I'm thrilled to have you. And for our listeners who are now, you've betrayed with your accent that you do not necessarily reside in the United States, although you have colleagues at the University of Virginia. So we'll tell the UVA folks to listen in. But it is so nice to meet you. Now, I do want to ask you, I'm wearing my Mets hat. And that's because while it is about 4 p.m. here in Seattle, it is 9 a.m., which means that you are living in the future. And this is a pivotal game for my baseball team. So can you give me any insights, since you can see the future? How did they do tonight?
Look, baseball is not my game. We don't.
All you had to say was they won, Peter. Don't worry. They won, and that's all you have to say.
Yeah, let's say they won.
Oh, Matt, thank you so much for revealing this. I won't bet. I won't place any bets. I'll just
knock them out of the park. It's
look at you.
Don't even watch it. Don't even watch it.
Oh, man. Okay, perfect. It is. I've really been looking forward to our conversation. And one of the reasons why is I created this podcast really to be a resource for educational leaders. And initially I thought, we'll just focus on leaders from the US. And then I had the good fortune of talking to Vikas Potas and Daniel Sobel and Damian Macbeth, and certainly now you. And when I looked at the followers, I saw, I have an uptick in Hong Kong, Philippines, and Australia. So I'd like to talk to you about something that we both care deeply about, and that is shared leadership. I listened to you on Ed Leaders Australia, and you were critiquing passive participation in the education environment, and you called for more shared decision-making. I also recognize that our systems are different, and that while in the US, a superintendent and a principal, they don't usually have teaching responsibilities, and in Australia, they very well may be the case, and in your case, they do. While our systems are different, I wonder if you could use your experiences to maybe just talk a little bit about how a school leader can initiate that authentic voice from students, from staff, from families, and that it's not performative, that it's an authentic utilization or leveraging of their voice.
Yeah, I think it's something that's essential to move education forward. And I think we know that may be the case. Like, I'm fairly confident, probably right across the world, that we have an understanding that the state that we're in right now is probably not where we want to be. But we're so bogged down in dealing with one little thing at a time rather than looking at a collective approach. And so sharing some of the leadership and actually listening to the voices in your community is the way forward, I think. That's how you connect with the people that are in your organization. And the way you do it is you shift from heard to held. And we're very good at hearing and then not acting. And I think that's, especially with student voice and parent voice in particular, I think we hear the students and we collect surveys and we do all the right things in the initial space, but then we don't act, or we don't act in a public enough way so that then the students and the parents understand that it was their voice that led to that decision. It's not really a call to upheave education and put it on its head. I think we need to work with what we have and reframe just some of the ways we do things. And I think a great way is invite your student leaders into the boardroom when you're having a leadership meeting. They might not be there for the whole time. I think you still have to be child safe and you have to keep decisions that are confidential, but have a section of the meeting where your student leaders are student leaders. They're not just representatives of the student cohort. They're representatives of the school, the college, whatever it may be. And I think you can do a similar thing with parents. I think there is an absolute barrier to anyone that is not in the senior leadership team. And your middle leaders don't feel like they're being held. Your teacher leaders certainly feel like they're at the lower end that ladder. And if we're really going to claim that we are a school community, then we need to act like a community. And communities they understand there may be a leader, but then there are experts. And anyone can be an expert and show leadership in something that they are really passionate or knowledgeable about. And if schools were to shift towards a more connection-based model, it would be like a village in which if I need something curriculum based, I may not necessarily go straight to the top or to the most obvious leader. I might go to the expert who I know can answer my questions. And then that's how you also build some succession. One of the things that is hitting schools the hardest at the moment is that it's very hard to hold on to staff and even keep them in the profession, not just the mobility between schools. If we respected that expertise and we shared some of those leadership responsibilities, I think we'd hold on to those staff a little bit more. It's about seeing the value in the person, not the tools or the resources or the strategies. It's about putting the person at the center. And when we're all in there together, we're more likely to have conversations with each other. And that's what professional development is. It's conversations. It's not PowerPoint. It's not lectures. It's discussion.
Yeah, it is. It really is the dialogue. And I can think back to, as you were describing, this idea that there are leaders at every level, that just because in the hierarchy you might be the most senior leader in terms of title, that doesn't necessarily bestow upon you any more wisdom than anyone else in the organization who can provide great insights on what's working and what's not. And I will say that some of the best decisions that we made were when we actually engaged the entire community, internal system of teachers, parents, students, leaders, and the external system, those who are in the community and the business community and those, because the way that the schools are funded, particularly in the United States, is a combination of a very small bit comes from the federal government, a portion comes from the states, and then the majority of your funding often comes from your local community, what's taxed on their homes, their property taxes. And so when we don't engage them, we lose immediately. And sometimes the worst decisions I made were when I somewhat made a declaration because I was so passionate about something without first pausing and saying, is this even resonating for the community as a whole? And I can say that the best decisions we made were when we listened to our students. When they said, particularly our adolescents, our high school students would say, I don't perform very well at very early, and yet you have me coming to school at 6:37 a.m. And when we shifted to a 9 o'clock start time, which really made some parents angry, but universally students they performed better, their attendance improved, their grades improved, their interactions with each other improved. They had fewer accidents in the morning as they were driving to school if they were driving their own vehicles. And so it was like, why didn't we do this? Because it was hard on the adults as opposed to what children were saying they needed. It was pretty fabulous.
And I think that's very much the situation we're in. School is designed for the adults. It's not designed for the students. And that's not how, again, a community works. And I think the way to make it less performative is to do exactly what you just said. It's to actually act on it and then explain how they contributed to that action. And I think the explanation is what's missing. And we can collect all this data and we can hear, but it's not until a student, a parent, a staff member, whoever it may be, feels like they actively contributed, that's when they feel held and they know that they're a part of something. And so moving from heard to held is essential.
I love it. I was reaching back as you were talking for a moment just so I could pull a book that I reference quite a bit. But it's The New Education by Scott Nearing, and he wrote it and he collected his data in 1910 and 1912. He traveled all across the United States looking for examples of progressive education, just communities doing things beyond the factory model. And it's all the things that we talk about now in terms of place-based and project-based learning and authentic leadership and really listening to voice. And he asks the fundamental question of the first and last word on all of this is, does education exist for children or do children exist for education? As you noted, we often say the school, it's designed for adults as opposed to, wait, I thought we almost took an oath, a promise to value and honor children and do what's right by them. So anyhow.
I think the system is the same as when my grandparents went through, and the world certainly is not. That's an imbalance. I think that's how I look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. For a long time, we would say the only institutions that look the same are prisons and schools. When we think of that, that's quite an indictment on our systems.
Absolutely.
Our guest today is Matt Pitman, head of school, educator, leader, author. Matt, in the leadership model that I use to advise others, there's a dimension called collective aspiration. And it's really the heart of the work that we do as leaders. And inside that dimension, there's a term, positive connectedness. And in the interview that I mentioned, and also in the article that you wrote, when the teacher-student relationship breaks down, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes, the problem isn't poor behavior, it's broken trust, is what you wrote. And I was like, yes, it's totally true. I think about all those interactions I've had with children and adults when the response is when the tension is so high, it really has little to do with anything other than broken trust. And so one of the themes that you return to again and again is connectedness, connection, and not just something nice to have, but it's something sustainable and essential in schools. And superintendents know all about this. I mean, that building connection can feel both urgent, especially when they first begin leading a school district, and then at times just impossible, especially when they are not rooted in their community, or that the roots just don't run very deep. And so I have two questions, but I think my first one would be, I guess, what does this mean for leaders who are really trying to make real connections in their districts? And you're doing this day in and day out as a head. And yet you're also working on your graduate work and have a connection with the folks at UVA. And so I'm curious, as you are providing insights and participating in dialogue, what are some things that you would suggest to leaders here?
I think, so I'm in a secondary school and I'm the head of the senior school. We're in a huge kind of school that's growing. And one of the things that is really important with a teenager, as I know you're aware, is
for the listeners, I was like, you're going to have to wait a second. I have a teenager walking in who also, right. When I said I'm recording, he's like, didn't matter.
And that's impacting on them.
That's right. Exactly. Who are your friends? You don't know them. You don't know them. I can't tell you the names. You don't know them.
They're very inward facing, and that's biological and psychological. And so working in a secondary school, like connection is even more essential, I think, because you're also fighting against something that is actively working against you. As they try to separate, you're trying to bring them in. But I think in that article, that Edutopia article, that was in response to a parent who had made a comment, and I read it and I thought, I think I can answer this. And so away I wrote. But it is about trust and it's about psychological safety. And I guess the things that I would recommend, in primary, secondary, or I suppose middle, high school, where same but different, I think it would be to be vulnerable. I think one of the most powerful things a leader can do is share how they're feeling. In my experience, we're well beyond the stoic leader who always has it together, doesn't have any human qualities, is a bit of an automaton. Like, we don't need that. Communities don't need that. So be vulnerable. I am quite often meeting with parents, for better or worse sometimes, and I'm quite happy to open the meeting by saying, here's the state I'm in and how I understand the situation. How do you understand it? And that's, instead of jumping into the first agenda item, and the same in a meeting, talk to staff about how I'm feeling, how they're feeling, and let's be human together before then we get into the work, because then we're not addressing bullet points, we're addressing problems as people. And so be vulnerable is one of the things that I would encourage you to do with the students as well. If everything within them is telling them to close all the doors and windows and hide under the table, show them that you're the opposite and everything is open. And if they want to come along and join you, they can join you. But
and don't be impatient. It may take time.
Correct. And I think these are even things like a quick round the table in one word, how are you feeling today? Or out of 10. And there's no judgment. It's just, actually, I'm feeling that as well. This happened. And it invites some feeling into the room. And it's something that I think is one of the most important things a leader can do.
You're so right. Yeah, I mean, when I think about what you're saying, it makes so much sense to me, because even with the adults, if you're a district leader, a system leader, and you are engaging with angry organizations, an angry group, and if you were to pause, just what we do with the kids at our schools, high five, handshake, just checking in, triaging as people are coming in, or the thumbs up, middle, thumbs down, just how you doing today, or the one word flash of, in one word, how are we feeling today? How are we doing? And you get a sense, oh, the room is not ready to do some problem solving. Right now, we need to actually connect as humans. We should be doing that. Absolutely. We should be doing that.
And I think that's one of the reasons why my latest book is called The Connection Conundrum, because I think it's a known problem. And what makes it a conundrum is that we're not addressing it. So we know that jumping straight into a meeting with heavy content at the end of the school day, if that's where the meeting happens to be, is not ideal. Nobody's going to be ready. But instead of taking 5 minutes to ready everyone or reset or just have fun, the second thing I was going to suggest is be fun as a leader. When I picture when I was at school, the principal or the senior leaders, they were very rigid, suit wearing, whatever it is. I wear a suit most days, except for when I'm teaching PE. But the suit isn't the defining kind of trait. Like, I wouldn't want people to remember the suit and the tie. I'd want to remember the person in the suit and the tie. And I think has become my goal, is you need to be fun. You need to be vulnerable. You need to be open to criticism. You need to ensure that if you're asking for something, that you're also giving it. And that's an exchange. That's a relationship. That's creating a sense of belonging. That's adding meaning to the meeting, to the whatever it might be, this group of people coming together, potentially against what they'd much rather like to do, professionally or personally. It's creating a space where it's safe to be yourself. And I think that when our focus is on just numbers, and we've become obsessed with numbers, when the focus is on numbers, which are a thing, and we group our people in our community and we put them in the same box, I don't want to be treated like a thing. So why would the people in my teams? I don't want them to feel like they're a thing. I want them to feel like they're a person. And 5 minutes given at the start of the meeting or the class or the staff briefing to remind people that we're in this together and that we're people, not things, saves you 10, 15 minutes, maybe a week's worth of work, because everyone will be in the room with you now. They're not thinking about what they have to cook for dinner or which of their children needs to get to practice, or life is going to just be put to the side a little bit because they're present with you doing what you're doing. And I think that's what a connected leader is to me. It's somebody who understands that people actually need to be the center, not just for marketing, but for success of your school. And our success can be measured in the scores and where students go to next, and college, university, whatever it may be. But our job is not to worry about that. It's to build the person and to help them become the best that they can be. And that's going to be on a continuum for every single person, but give people the opportunity to be the best they can be on a Tuesday, on a Thursday. Not 100%, but the best that they can offer. And I think you'll get more. You'll get more of the things you can sell, because I understand we still need to sell things, and we need to make sure we've got students in seats and staff at whiteboards, whatever it might be. But we can do it a different way, and we can do it without making people feel like they're an object.
I have an idea of how you're going to answer this next question, because I think it will likely align or complement your amazing definition on a connected leader. How does the term an imperfect leader resonate with you?
I definitely consider myself imperfect. I think it's an authentic and sustainable leader. It's somebody who can actually do the job. It's somebody who relies on others, who's able to open up and accept, that we don't know everything, and we can't. We're never going to know everything. And as soon as we think we do, or as soon as, if I ever felt like I was perfect, that would be the time for me to leave. It's an authentic leader is an authentic learner, and it's someone who is on a journey, not at a destination. And it's taken me been a bit of a roller coaster to get there and to that understanding. Again, it's a bit of a conundrum. I think we know this and we'd like this to be the case, but it takes a while to get there. But we ask our students and our parents to come along on a journey. We're on that journey too, and we're not external to it. We're not facilitating the journey, we're journeying. And I think that's what an imperfect leader is. It's someone who accepts that sometimes things will wait until tomorrow. Sometimes things need to be done right now. Not everything is going to go the way that was planned, but there is something to gain from all of those missteps. As long as you're not putting people at harm, then failure is just all part of the parcel.
And we'll be right back. Hey, district leaders, I know you already know this. In schools worldwide, cell phones are posing real challenges on student engagement and mental well-being, and I want you to meet Yonder, a proud sponsor of An Imperfect Leader. And let me share this story from a visit I made to some schools in Silicon Valley. I asked some kids what they liked about Yonder, and after some funny looks, they shared that actually, with Yonder, teachers don't have to battle with them over phones anymore. In fact, one kid said to me he didn't have to worry anymore about his parents texting him in class, and the kid next to him sort of shoved him and goes, "Texting? My mom used to FaceTime me in class." I want to introduce you to a support system that increases teaching and learning. I want you to discover why 1 million students choose Yonder daily. Minimize distractions, maximize learning potential. To learn more, go to overyonder.com. YONDR.
So I want to talk a minute about the Mosaic Project. It is one of our favorite organizations and has over 25 years of experience empowering students to really celebrate differences, communicate assertively, and resolve conflict peacefully at their outdoor school. I happen to have experience being part of the Mosaic Project, and so I can absolutely tell you it's an amazing organization. Their innovative SEL curriculum is now available to our Imperfect Leader audience. And so you can get a 10% discount through their new documentary film-based Mosaic Classroom project. So just let the people know during your onboarding process to receive that 10% discount is to just mention An Imperfect Leader. Learn more about the Mosaic Project at mosaicproject.org.
This is Greg Meyer, Jamie's partner at APC Leadership Collaborative. Superintendents know that school principals are the single biggest lever that any school district has for improving student joy and success. Unfortunately, there's very little professional development for the specific things that a principal has to do to improve their school. At APC Leadership Collaborative, we specialize in coaching principals to take on audacious goals, build their leadership skills, and make big improvements in their school. If that inspires you, let's connect and talk about how we can collaborate. Find APC Leadership Collaborative online at apccolab.com.
When leaders think in systems, they think differently. They see the big picture, making decisions that create coherence and strengthen communication across their teams. They build adaptability, flexibility, and engagement. Every day, school leaders face complex challenges, from student engagement to staff alignment. What if your team could see those challenges as part of a bigger picture? That's what happens when you think in systems. It's how leaders turn complexity into connection and challenges into opportunities for growth. At the Waters Center for Systems Thinking, we help educators and organizations build this capacity, developing the habits and tools that turn vision into action. Think differently, think in systems. Sign up for our webinars, free resources, or a consultation by visiting our website, which you can find in the show notes.
We're back for segment 2 of An Imperfect Leader called Imperfect Leadership in After Action. And my guest today is Dr. Matt Pitman, head of school, educator, leader, and author. And in this segment, we ask our guests to deconstruct a decision that they made, and then we discuss it. So Matt, what happened?
So I was thinking about ahead of time what I might discuss. And I'm not sure that it's one situation, but I think the thing that I've chosen is something that had a significant impact on some of the things we were talking about in segment 1. So I think it fits. But I was deep in middle leadership in a position that I was quite happy to be in, but I was just desperately focused on the next step. And I think in that mind and in that headspace, I made a whole heap of decisions that were very much for me and trying to perhaps demonstrate that I was ready for the next step rather than actually doing what I reflect on now as being the work. And so it's not necessarily one decision, but I was so transfixed with my own progression and getting to the next role, which is not a healthy way, I think, for a leader to approach their job. And
It's so
especially in
interesting.
school. And so I was just transfixed and I couldn't get myself away from it. And then that meant that opportunities potentially for some of the students were missed. In some interactions with parents, potentially they weren't unpacked at the level that I would like them to be unpacked now. And it wasn't really, it was about 12 months where I was really desperate to get to where I wanted to be. And I knew that I could do that next job. And I think there was faith in the school I was at the time. But on a daily basis, I was being
weren't fully
observed
present.
as not doing my current role.
Yeah.
And I guess it wasn't until my daughter was born, which she's about to turn 3, that I had this big wave of perspective and an understanding of how quickly time passes and how a leader and a father and a parent and a grandparent, a family member, a member of a community needs to be present daily. And that's how you contribute. It's not about a role or what's next for me. It's what's next for the people that I'm leading.
This is a great topic. And a couple of things. First, just as an aside, a 3-year-old is just a professional 2-year-old. Like they shed their amateur status and then they are fully...
No,
they have language.
She's a very quiet, sweet little girl. And then occasionally...
You see the professional...
I don't know where she went.
I just remember being like, whoa, every terrible 2s. Are you kidding me? So it was really amazing. Okay, so that's just an aside. More importantly, your after-action review here. And so if I understand correctly, you had an opportunity for promotion and you sought that with all your energy. And so we're going to ask about what got overlooked. You started to allude to overlooking parts of the importance of certain relationships with kids, with parents, because you were very focused. I write about this as well. I mean, there are some who wait for a promotion to come to them and it never comes. There are others who actively worked for that, and often it can be, at least in the United States, very much by gender and by race, about who is more likely to go after certain jobs and those who wait to be recognized and maybe picked. And so I'm really interested in that, if that's the case in Australia as well. But what I hear is you were all in on this next job and potentially overlooked some of your responsibilities or just how you could have meaningfully connected with the people that were in your current space or that space at that time.
Yeah, I think what I overlooked was the importance of doing the job that you have. Yeah. And it's not something that I have had to focus on in any great depth again, because the lesson was learned.
Did anyone tell you that you were campaigning? Like, what are you doing right now? Are you campaigning for a job, or you had already been hired and you were looking towards that job?
I think to jump back, it was, I looked for this job originally, didn't quite get that position, but was hired to build up to it. And instead of seeing that as an opportunity for myself as a young leader to produce results that proved what I had spoken about in the interview that perhaps didn't quite land against other candidates or whatever was the case, I never questioned the process, but I had this opportunity to join this school and to prove myself. And instead of proving myself in the role, I decided to, I guess, approach it at a surface level. And I wasn't fully aware that I was approaching it at that level. But at the end, when the roles came up and I interviewed and I didn't get that role again, it was then I had really tough conversations with leaders senior to me about what that might look like. And one of the comments, and it's a comment that I carry with me and I'm quite happy to share it because, again, I'm imperfect and I have to learn, and I think it's a good lesson for others. One of the comments was, it didn't look like you wanted to do the job you're in.
Oh.
And that's a really, in the moment, I was not for that comment. I did not enjoy hearing the comment. But on reflection, that honesty and that clear one sentence that really cut to the center of the issue I had built for myself. That has had a meaningful impact on the rest of my career since that point, because it was true. I wasn't interested in doing the role I was doing. I was trying to use it as a springboard to get to the role I wanted. And instead of doing what a leader should do, junior, middle, senior, wherever you are, instead of leading in the space you have, I was leading for the space I wanted. And so I wasn't helping myself. I don't think I was ineffective. Like I was never pulled in to be told that things weren't going as they needed to go. But on reflection, by my own measurement, I wasn't doing what I would claim as success. Not perfection, but success for me. And so for that, whatever it was, 8 to 12 months, I look back on that now and think there's the springboard for growth, but there's a period of time where I missed opportunities.
Yeah.
And perhaps I didn't let anyone down, but I did let myself down.
I was going to say, it sounds like there's somebody you let down. That was you. Yeah.
And I think
curious.
that, you can lead at the surface level and be competent, but that's competence not the level I want to work at. And so that's my reminder. And so I overlooked a lot, and I learned a lot about the value of being in the room, as we were talking about in the first segment, and recognizing that if you're not discussing, and I wasn't talking about this, obviously, because if I had voiced it, perhaps somebody would have come in with some feedback and advice earlier, but also I wasn't being asked. And so that's where creating a community where people openly share and feel safe and have the permission to do so. That's what
it looks like for it not to
it.
exist. So you are advocating for its existence. Yeah, it sounds like I wouldn't call it a balancing loop, but it was almost a reinforcing loop. So not being engaged meant that you separated yourself, and then so you're separated. So then maybe you're not included even more. And so you just keep pulling away even more. That's interesting to me. I'm curious about what you learned about relationships, maybe what new relationships formed, particularly someone had the courage to tell you something you may not have wanted to hear, but you needed to hear.
And that's exactly what I was going to say. I think it's clarity, and it's lots of really intelligent and famous people have said similar things, but I think Brené Brown says clear is kind. I think that's
totally.
Three words, and it's really easy. It's really easy to think on. It's very hard to do as a leader. And I think in that moment, when I look back at it now, I look back at my assistant principal, who was the one who delivered that line to me. That was an act of courage, because we were friends and we were colleagues, and we got along, still do get along fine. There was no animosity there. And so that's even harder to drop that bombshell. And it wasn't convoluted. It wasn't long. There wasn't the big story. It wasn't the sandwich and the positive, negative, positive. It was just, here's something you need to hear. And I'm not going to explain to you that it's really difficult for me to say first, because the first thing you need to hear is this. And then we can talk about it. And I'm quite happy to do the same thing where I need to. Say something that might be a little bit brutal, but make it honest, keep it short, and then explain to them, look, that was actually difficult for me to say, but I think it's what you need to hear. One of the mistakes, and it's something that I also did when I tried to take this on first, is I would front load it with how I was feeling. And it's not about me. It needs to be that message. And the more you drift and pad and add fluff before the message, the less impact it has. And that had a huge impact. I still think about it. It makes me a little bit uncomfortable to think about it, but that's good. That's, again, reminds me that, one, I've come a long way, hopefully, I think, and two, I'm imperfect, but that's what I'm after. I'm not after perfection. And it was very frustrating at the time to have, on one hand, not held the standard in the job I had that I would like to have, two, to not get the job that I wanted, and just be in this middle space. And it was very confronting. But I think that's where growth is created.
Yeah.
And Confronting's the right word, because it's still confronting me right now. But I think it's worth sharing. I think it's something
I'm
that
grateful
you need to
for it and to you for sharing, because I think particularly those leaders who are listening right now who have responsibilities in terms of giving people feedback, being mindful of how they do that. And it is not about them. It is about providing the authentic, genuine, caring, compassionate feedback, direct, and then being able to then follow up with, so here it is. This is what is the problem I see. And I care so deeply for you, which is why I had to say it first. And then you can get into the other pieces of really attending to someone's feelings, if that is the piece that's necessary.
And so here's how I can support you to address it.
Yeah.
And so if you start with the support, so you start with how I'm feeling as the person delivering the message, it gets muddied.
Right. This is really hard for me.
Here's the harsh things.
Right.
But I've got you and I'm here and I'm going to do what I can to support you to do it. I'm not going to do it for you. I'm going to support you to do it. That's the way. And it's
Have
not,
you
it's
also
not easy.
discovered?
I'm not good at it. I'm still not good at it.
We're human, and most humans, particularly if we're compassionate humans, we struggle with conflict. And that is, I think, completely normal. I'm curious about what you've learned from how much time you allow to go by before you give that kind of feedback. I would let things go sometimes too long because I would hope that things would get better. I try to model a more appropriate behavior. I try to reward those who were doing what I was hoping to see, until you get to the point where you say, okay, I can't right this ship. I need to talk. I'm curious.
It's case by case, I think.
Sure.
There's on a continuum of low level, this is just practice that we need to tidy up or whatever it might be, to this is going to be put somebody at harm. That really is going to pace out your decision. I think what I try to do is, my job as a leader is to empower the community that sits underneath the role that I hold. I don't like to think of it like the head of the table, but in reality, there is a hierarchy, there is a decision-making tree. It doesn't have to be something that's lived every day, but it's there. The structures are there. And so I would try to work through who is the direct report to this staff member, if that was the case, and try and work at that level. And then if not, bring the next person in. And we might skip a few levels if there's many to get things moving. But I think, again, my job is to build the capacity of everyone that's below me in that structure. I often say to my staff, my job is to create not my replacement, my challenger. When this tenure is up, I want you all to apply. And if I'm not the best candidate and I still want that position, I want to work for it. And that's my job, is to build. And it's not just build students, it's to build relationships and connection with parents and staff. And so I would work with the direct report, if it was appropriate to do so, and try and give them a gentle nudge into those difficult conversations and support that to happen. And then where it needs to be, if it gets to where I am or it needs to go higher, that's when, it's time to just say it.
Yeah.
But I think we can build skills and a bit of knowledge and see if that's where the issue is before we jump straight to the really personal kind of thing that's going to hit hard. And you never know how hard it might hit. And so if you have had all the support to start with, then there's something to fall back to. And you can say, well, I'm ready to step in and support you. And you've been with this person and you did this with this person. You have a team around you. I'm telling you, I'm giving you the hard word now, but I'm telling you that because we value you and we want you here. This is not you on the way out. This is because I want to retain you. And we think we can work together as a team.
Do you sense that the experience you had influenced the way that you behave today in terms of how you approach these things? I mean, it's kind of a silly question, but we always end with, how did this experience, what did you learn from it? Or what was something that was good that came out of this experience? And it seems like you have a pretty good approach to leading, to managing, to engaging, to connecting with people you work with.
Yeah, I hope so.
Don't worry. Next
it's-
week we'll have all your team on, and they'll no kidding.
I mean, that would be a really interesting episode for me. I'm
For
not
you.
sure if it would
That's
be
right.
for everyone
That's
else.
right.
It's more a private episode than
That's right.
anything, and a really difficult Monday the weekend after. I think it's obviously had an influence, and
Right.
it's shown me the importance of, I guess, working with what you have in front of you. And on a micro scale, that is the role I'm in. And I still want the next position. I'm looking towards it. Like I'm actively having conversations and looking at what might I need to put together. But it's not put it together for that. It's talking to other people in roles that are above me about what are some of the things that you are doing, and then going, actually, we could do that here. And so it's in service of potentially both, but not at the cost of my current role.
Yeah.
And that's the lesson.
That's a
I
real
think
shift.
You can be ambitious, but that needs to be 30%. The 70 or more or whatever is appropriate needs to be where you're at right now, because you have a responsibility. And that responsibility is not to do a surface level job and then scoot off. Like you're responsible for people, not objects. And I think if I look back at that time, it was me looking selfishly at what I wanted and not considering the people that I may have been letting down or missing opportunities for, or with, perhaps not letting down, but maybe not pushing them to go that extra mile in service of my own pursuit. And there's a way to do both, but it's certainly not evenly weighted. And I think you always need to be ambitious and to grow. And that's what a learner is. And that's what we're trying to instill in our students. It's what I'm trying to welcome in our parents, to have a learning mindset and be open-minded. And it's what I need to be myself. And so part of my learning is I want to be challenged in the near future beyond what I'm doing now. But I also need to respect the position I'm in now. I'm not doing this position for that next step. I'm doing it because I want to be in the position I'm in. And when it comes time to prove that I think I'm ready for the next step, I will do that then, not now.
I love it. Our guest today was Dr. Matt Pitman, head of school, educator, leader, and author of The Connection Conundrum, empowering teachers to lead a culture of sustainable connection. And I wrote just a couple of notes. One is, the overarching theme really is about being present. I do love the fact that you reference Brene Brown for both Clear is Kind and the power of being vulnerable, and a reminder to be fun. Like, our work should be fun. We should enjoy the people and make it a place where people want to be. And that we ought to look beyond the fact that sometimes people feel as if they are numbers. That means we have failed in creating the cultural field. And so speaking so clearly about we're not numbers, we've got to make sure that people feel as if they belong. And to your point, we're people, not things. Matt, thank you so much for being on our program.
No, thank you for the invite. I read your book and I loved it. And so then to meet you, albeit here on a screen, these conversations, I think it's always great. We have a real podcasting, culture in Australia, and there's a lot of educators who love to have these conversations. But I think sometimes going a bit further abroad, it's where, again, we get this idea that we're all in this big community together. And I think that's the value of being at UVA and having a conversation with you and understanding that this is bigger than one person and it's bigger than my local context. This is about the future, and dialogue and conversation is the way. That's the professional development. This has been fun. I've really enjoyed it.
So we're back. Peter, can we start with where the phrase you mentioned at the opening about shifting from heard to held?
Yes, absolutely.
It really resonated as someone who, as an educational leader that listens to a lot of educators and students and parents personally.
Yeah.
Moving from heard to held is very difficult. And the thing that I put down, my reflection was about how the reason why this doesn't happen, particularly from students to toward school change or parents towards school change is that adults are slow to change, period. Like the reason why we don't change is it's not that I don't think people are not heard. I think the data is always heard. People are moved by what students have to say. But when you say that means that they're saying we want to think about shifting how the high school schedule is done. We should probably talk about all the data. And it doesn't mean they won't. It just means the students you just heard will not see the impact of the change that they have instigated. And so my question that I raise to you as a superintendent is, what in your experience speeds up that process? How do you get faster from heard to held?
I do think that one of the ways that I have noticed when we've wanted to, so I can give you an example. I've used it once before.
Yeah.
About wanting to change the way that we did grades. And I'm not talking about standard reference grading. I'm talking about whether or not it was appropriate that our school district would move towards weighted grades. And we brought students in who felt so passionately about adopting that model because they would say, you tell me I should take an AP class to stretch myself, then I will be more likely to graduate college if I take one and even two. However, I got to get into college. And so if I take that class and get a C, I understand what you're telling me. That experience helps me better be prepared for college, but it's a C on my transcript. But if you weight the grade, it may now be a B or a B to an A. And so I was so moved by their insistence that if they're going to give a little, we better give a little kind of thing. If they're going to take the risk, we need to accommodate them. So I thought for sure my board would be all on board. So we did a work session. We did a philosophical chairs kind of thing where the kids made a statement and then board members would move based on how they perceived the information. And we would then ask each of them to say what they were thinking. And I couldn't believe it that it failed 4-3 in terms of moving forward, that they thought we've never had weighted grades, so why should we start now? And then we learned that students applying to the University of Missouri, which is the flagship school in the state and for which 60% of the students would go to from Columbia, many of their parents work at the university. It was the largest employer, and so they have tuition reimbursement or just accommodations there. What they learned was that the school was not stripping away weighted grades from other kids who were coming in from around the state or around the country. So their GPAs were higher and made them eligible for scholarships that Columbia kids were no longer eligible. So then all of a sudden, the board moved pretty quickly to accommodate the needs of students. And so I was going to answer your question to say, I think when you make an emotional appeal and it makes sense in terms of hearing the voices of students, they're not just heard, that they're held. And I saw that when it came to start times. Students actually convinced the board that was important enough for their safety and their health and their ability to achieve in school that they made the change to have start time start at 9. But in this case, it was a financial thing that all of a sudden became a big issue for the board because they were hearing from parents about what we were leaving on the table for kids and the impact parents were going to have to pay more money for college. So I guess I would throw it back to you, and hearing those two scenarios, how might you think, what is it that you're hearing from me that suggests what kind of motivates change? And of course, this is just one scenario. I mean, two scenarios, but one board, and it may be different in other places.
I mean, he says later, so can I connect to something else that Dr. Pitman said?
Please.
Yeah, so he says later, basically, if we're really going to, he says this, quote, I'm going to read the quote. If we're really going to claim that we're a school community, then we need to act like a community. They may understand that there's a leader, but there are experts and anyone can be an expert and show leadership in something that they're really passionate and knowledgeable about. And the reason why I'm making a connection to that particular quote is it's my entire ethos for my own organization that change can happen anywhere. Like waiting for the board to vote so that it could do the thing, that you could put a policy in, all of that is helpful for system-wide change. But instigating change, oh, it's terrible. It's a terrible system. Don't do that.
Yeah. You're constrained by the fact that the board, that's their authority in terms of how grades are issued, and they have to be the ones to do it. And potentially what you're saying is, and I'll return to that quote too, because I also highlighted it, because I thought to myself, I mean, he says if I need something curriculum based, I may not necessarily go straight to the top. I might go to the expert who I know can answer my questions. And so maybe if we had started with the counselors and our data department and said, let's just create weighted grades just to see what it would mean for sending it along with the student's transcript to the college so that they can be eligible. And I'll start working on the board around why that's important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My theory of action, and where I do see change as quicker, is I have a better chance of change in I'll do instruction. Instruction will improve more quickly if I talk to fifth grade teachers. Talking to fifth grade teachers is more likely to improve instruction than any instructional framework adoption. It's just going to be faster. They're going to be more open. They're going to, will they have the right research? Maybe if they have a coach. But if they don't, it doesn't really matter. What they need is someone to rely on each other for strengths and weaknesses and to start a system where they start to figure out like what do they want to try, et cetera. So I don't think that herd to held goes as quick as it should usually in our systems. But I think that if we don't say the phrase herd to held, if we don't hold that as a value, it won't. So the thing that I think what Dr. Pitman is saying is hold it as a value and you are more likely to get there. Number two, you don't have to rely on it going the same direction every time, that there's got to be multiple different ways to do it. This is my principal leadership in the 101. Like anything that anybody else can do, it's all yours, baby. Take it. I do not feel responsible for any one thing. I feel responsible for all of the things.
And so let me say, if I can continue the conversation around what were some of the things that stood out to you, I think that's an awesome entree into when he talks about traditional leadership, that we are beyond the stoic leader, which I thought was kind of funny. I think that's very much part of the Commonwealth, of Australia, New Zealand, Canada, UK, that this stoic leader. To some extent, the US has had that. It's been more leading by decree as opposed to leading collectively in a shared manner. And so he says that's no longer the way that, and it's no longer effective, and that one needs to be vulnerable and to be human together and all of that to do that work. And I feel like that's an extension of what you just said in terms of trust the people to get their work and do that work together. As you have noted, when it comes to students learning, the conversation is essential. And I think that's with adults too. The conversation, even if it drifts to other things, always comes back to what is the work we're doing and is essential. And so I'm really thinking about that quite a bit as I'm thinking about the new role I'll be taking starting in the summer. And how do I balance what were probably traditional faculty meetings in my past as a principal and rethink them to, do we all need to be in that space together? Probably initially to celebrate each other and be together and remind each other that we're doing this work together, because sometimes it feels isolating to be in your classroom and the only time you see them is at lunch or on the playground. And then at the same time, give them the majority of the time to be together, to work together and do that work. And then I can float and visit and see what's going on.
I love that. Exactly.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking.
It connects to something else he said there's multiple things he said that I'm like, oh, this resonates for me because I'm trying to live to that. That's what I'm trying to do in my work, and my educational ethos is tied to this. He says, this one's a little bit longer of a quote. He says, quote, it's about seeing the value in the person, not the tools or the resources or the strategies. It's about putting the person at the center. And when we're all in there together, we are more likely to have conversations with each other. And that's what professional development is. It's just conversations, not PowerPoint, not lectures. It's discussion.
You just said it. Yeah.
I could not agree more.
Yeah. And here's the thing. It's amazing because what you just said and what I was somewhat alluding to is aligned to another quote that he had, which was, when we take 5 minutes to connect as humans, he says, it saves you 10, 15 minutes, maybe a week's worth of work, because everyone will be in the same room with you. So you're there with you now, and then to your point of doing that work.
Exactly.
And giving people that time together.
What I think is I never walk into any space being and I try not to anyway. I shouldn't say never, but I really try not to walk into any space as the expert. I'm not an expert. I walk into the space with the ability to facilitate discussion. Why is it called professional learning, professional development? Because all I'm doing is creating conversations. That's all I'm trying to do. I don't lecture. I'm not a trainer. That one I don't love at all. Like, to some degree, I don't think you can actually be trained to be an educator. It's too complicated. It's way too complicated. Like, you could be trained to fix a bike. A bike has this many parts, and it's definitely complicated. I'm not indicating that it's not complicated, but it's not.
I think you're saying
human
it's
being.
complex. It's so
Yes,
complex.
exactly. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But there is
exactly.
Yeah. That's interesting. I wonder also, as we were thinking about just with the time that we have left, thinking about his after action review. And I'm curious to know what you thought, and I will just preface it by saying I thought it was marvelous because it is clearly the way that so many leaders find themselves leading. And to have had a trusted subordinate tell you, hey, it looks like right now what you're doing is that you're leading. What is it? It didn't look
I'll
like
read it. I'll read it word for word.
Okay.
He says the feedback he got from one of his trusted leaders and friends was, it didn't look like you wanted the job. You wanted to do the job that you're in. It didn't look like you wanted to do the job you're in.
Brutal.
Honest. Could that resonate more for both of us in this moment? Like, I'm so interested in your own take on that, given that you just applied for, traveled down to another country, are taking up a whole new job in another country.
Oh, you don't even have to talk about that. I can tell you from my past life, when our superintendent retired or announced his retirement, I was at a conference in Miami, and almost immediately in my head, I shifted to a campaign in my head. All right, got to campaign this. Played it out. Who are the people? Who are the 7 board members? How do I whip up those votes? How do I make sure I get at least 4? It didn't even matter in my head at that moment that I was going to limp in if I had 4. 4. My gosh. And so I had similarly, she was a colleague who said, it looks like you're campaigning. And it was essentially, it says, it looks like you don't want the job that you're doing right now. You're more working towards the job you don't have. And so when he said that, it was like, oh, it's so human that we do that. We get in our heads around, oh my God, this is the opportunity. And then how we've been socialized. So I was socialized in a way, it was like, of course you're going to be superintendent, then probably you'll be governor. It's like, wait, why?
Wow.
Why? And so I'm telling you. And so I started reading a book. I actually just finished it on the plane since I had 8 hours and then 16 hours or whatever to get home, called 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Berkman. On average, in our lives, we have 4,000 weeks. What are you going to do with them? Kind of thing.
Oh.
And some of us will live longer than 80 and some of us won't. But 4,000 is probably a good number to be thinking about in terms of your life. And he went after the way I used to organize my time, probably still do to some extent, is how can I become more efficient? The Getting Things Done model by David Allen. So if I can do it within 2 minutes, I do it right away. If I can't, I put it into this inbox and then I work towards inbox 0 and I become super efficient because I'm kind of a scatterbrain. So if I'm not super efficient, then I don't know what I am. But what he reminds me or tells me or teaches me is, Berkman, is that really all that's doing is giving me more time to do more work as opposed to what is it that you truly want to be doing. And so that book confirmed for me this job in Cartagena, which was do the work that brings you joy as opposed to the work that you think you're supposed to be doing. Do the work that you've been assigned right now. You and I should be focused on this podcast, doing this work right now, as opposed to all the other things that are distracting us in our lives. And then we finish, okay, then we can bring our focus. And he also says, be ruthless about 3 things that you're going to be focused on. And then everything else, even if they're nice, you don't do them unless you're replacing one of those 3. And he tells great stories. So I highly recommend it. It was my friend Ian Varley, who wrote the music for our podcast, recommended it to me, and I just ate it up. I'm all in.
It's interesting. I really responded differently to the prompt given my current state, though it resonated with me. I said I want to read my notes. I basically said educational work is in turmoil because public schools are in turmoil. So my work is in turmoil. And recently, as I try to figure out and navigate that turmoil, I've made choices that are not about necessarily doing the best work of the job that I'm in currently. They're about trying to make it survive, keep going, navigate the challenges over here, or the depression that comes up with this big change. It's changing. And so I'm like, oh, I feel lethargic. I feel not motivated. All that kind of stuff. And his reflection really touched me in that, oh, I'm afraid. I'm really afraid of the change. And so I'm doing things that are selfish in nature in order to navigate the fear that comes with this change. And I'm trying to let that go. I'm trying
holding on to what has been as opposed to embracing what could be.
Yeah. I mean, and to some degree, I think that making moves the examples are things like using language that I think is a little bit more ad focused sometimes in the way in which I talk about my work that I never did before. And I did that because I'm like, this'll goose it. This'll get us another little bit of work. And it's inauthentic. It doesn't align to who we are as an organization. So much so that when I read it in a newsletter or whatever it is, I go, yuck, I don't like that.
Who's that?
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm going through that right now as I try to make sure that I'm staying true to what I care about and that I'm doing the job that I have right now as best I can.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Truly. That's a really deep reflection that you're doing in a public space. And I truly think that those who are listening are also grappling with a fundamental change in the landscape of education.
Right.
At whatever level that they get to lead. And so
that would be helpful for me. Okay.
Yeah.
It's actually not a lie.
I bet you there's someone listening who said, I'd love to talk to you.
That'd be great.
I'd love to be with you.
I'd love a little help.
They could put that in the show notes. Not the show notes. They could put that in their 5-star review. Hey, Jamie, give me a call.
I want to talk to Dr. Pitman about the future of the Warriors as well as the future of the Niners, both of which are up in the air at the moment.
He's a fortune teller, so get ready.
But that was a wonderful conversation. When I walk away from all of these I do this from all over the States too, but the international ones particularly makes me go, gosh, we should go to Australia. Let's go see that school.
Oh, I know he'd welcome us. He's a superstar and just finished his doctorate at UVA, so he's been coming to the States a little bit. Although I don't think we'll see him anytime soon. All righty.
All right.
You've been listening to An Imperfect Leader, Superintendents and Leadership Podcast, and we will see you next week. Jamie, I'll see you next week.
I'll see you next week, Peter.
Music for An Imperfect Leader was written and arranged by Ian Varley. Sam Falbo created our artwork, a wood print inspired Daruma doll butterfly. Remember, imperfect leadership is not a scarlet letter. It's a badge of honor. It recognizes that serving as a lead learner is about being a vulnerable leader, an empathetic leader, a compassionate leader. We are proud to be imperfect leaders, so join us next time for another episode of An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents and Leadership Podcast.